Hi there, folks, and welcome to our Learn Live session here at Microsoft Build. My name is Homo, and I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft focused on Power Apps and Fusion development. Today, I'm with my colleague Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Homo. How about you? What a great day to be talking about Fusion development.
Very true. I am doing great. It is day 2 of Microsoft Build. It's been an amazing build so far. It has been said that there's been more than 50 new announcements within the first few hours of build. That's a lot to take in. What are some of your best takeaways from build so far?
Well, so far, I have to say easily, it's the announcement that .NET MAUI, the next evolution of Xamarin, is now GA and ready to go for everybody to use all the time. Build your apps, start going. It's GA, it's ready to go. Do it. Can't wait. I'm going to be, right after this, Homo, I'm going to be making a .NET MAUI app. I can't wait because I'll tell you
That
why. I'll tell you why. I can't wait. So I'm so excited about this. so I I used to be, still am, a Xamarin developer, but now .NET MAUI is the next evolution of Xamarin to make mobile apps. And so, being in cloud advocacy, we get to tell everybody about how great it is to build apps using Azure or using Power or using the whole Microsoft cloud. And so I'm so excited to get started with this brand new technology, which Power Apps and Fusion is a brand new technology too. Well, it's been around for a while,
right.
but we get to use things. So, Homo, what about yours? What was your favorite
Yeah, no,
announcement?
the .NET MAUI sounds really good. I too have a background with .NET, and I sure will be trying that out as soon as I get a bit of time. My favorite announcement has been the introduction of Power Pages as the fifth and new product of the Power Platform. What it is a product that allows you to create low code external facing websites for your business. And in the theme of today's Learn Live, in the theme of our session, I love that you get the chance to extend and customize these sites with the best in class pro dev tooling. So really great things are happening both within .NET and the Power Platform.
Oh, I love the idea of Power Pages. I hadn't heard about that. I'll admit I'm a little bit behind on my build announcements, but that sounds amazing. And it's something that I've been waiting for with Power Portals, but now Power
Right.
Pages. Does Power Pages kind of take over for Portals?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much the same thing, but now it's its own standalone product. So it'll be updated and to the best with the amount of features and announcements that will take place. And I think now that it's now its own standalone product, it will get the same highlights as all the other amazing products within the platform. So I'm really excited about the future of that.
Great. Well, Homalemo, we've been chatting not about this
Yeah.
learn module. So what do you say? We should probably get right into it. How about that?
Yeah, no, let's jump straight in. So as we know that this particular module is part of a larger Microsoft learning path. So why don't we give a bit of context as to why and let the audience know what that learning path is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we put together this learn path, which consists of 5 different modules about what Fusion development is. And this was aimed at professional developers. What I mean by professional developers are the people who are writing quote unquote high code. So if you're developing like web APIs day after day using like .NET, you're a high code developer. And Power Apps is what's known as low code or citizen developers. You know, low code doesn't mean no code. You're still going to be writing code. All right. Fusion development, though, is the mixture or the intersection of the citizen devs with the professional devs, and you're going to be building apps even better together. All right. And so this 5 module learning path kind of takes you on the journey of building applications with the Fusion development. So we start off with actually defining what Fusion development is. To the next module, which is super interesting, is understanding low code as a traditional high code developer, which introduces you to the world of Power Apps and how awesome it is, because it is totally awesome. And then we go through and eventually get to the fifth module, which is discovering and using web APIs with Power Apps, which we'll be talking about. But first, Homolemo, let's tell everybody what Microsoft Learn is.
Sure. So Microsoft Learn is a free online training platform that provides interactive learning for Microsoft products and so much more. The main goal is to help you to become a pro on any of these technologies like the Power Platform or .NET. So you learn with a fun, guided, hands-on, interactive content that's specific to your role. So Matt has mentioned that our module for today is discover and use web APIs with Power Apps, which is part of a larger Fusion development learning path. And I really like this concept of Fusion development because it allows businesses to break down the silos and allows for people to collaborate across teams.
Absolutely. And Homolemo, have you ever taken part in a Fusion development process working with high code and low code developers on the same team?
Not my not with a team, but I'm actually building a couple of POCs right now that dabble with the Fusion development concepts, where you can see both the high code or traditional side of things, as well as the low code or Power Platform side of things, which I think was really exciting, and I'm really excited to show that to everyone quite soon.
Awesome. And I'm going to get involved, so you will be working on a team very
Sure,
soon.
for
Me and you.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, so as we move on here, this particular module that we will be talking about has three main learning objectives. We're going to be creating a custom connector using Azure API Management by deploying a web API. Then we're going to dive into how to create a custom connector using an open API document, which is another way which this can be done. And then finally, we will then learn about how we can test and use these custom connectors to call or invoke a web API from within a Power App. And what's great about all of these objectives is that they are tasks which are usually completed by two different sets of people. On one hand, you have the high code or traditional pro dev building out the APIs and deploying to Azure. And on the other side, you have the citizen dev using these APIs by way of a custom connector inside of the Power App Studio. So you never have to leave the tools that you're familiar with. And I think this is a concept that we will touch on quite a bit moving forward.
Absolutely. This is all about the fusion development, or the intersection between a high code and low code development teams, and building apps better together. And yeah, we're going to get over and touch on the API management and building, like the OpenAPI document. They're all about the high code, and then using it and consuming it in with Power Apps. So,
Sure.
Homolemo, what do you say I give a quick minute and a half overview of what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. That sounds
All
good.
right. So, what I have here, real quick, is a ASP.NET Web API, and you can see that it is C sharp, and it should be. If you're a Web API C sharp developer, this should all be useful and familiar to you. Now, it's done in a video, and the reason it's done in a video is because, one, I'm a bad typer, and I don't want to bore our audience watching me make typos. And two, sometimes it takes a little bit to provision things, like when you're deploying it to Azure and then spinning up all the Azure services. So we decided to put everything in the video to help speed along the process. All right.
Right.
Now, with that said, I'm just going to go over the whole process here of taking a web API, deploying it in the app service, deploying it in the API management, creating the custom connector, and then consuming it in a Power App in 60 seconds. And then we're going to break it down in depth. Okay, so here we go. So the very first step is at the highlighted portion at the top is using the Microsoft.OpenAPI.models. So we're just making sure we import our namespace correctly.
Hmm.
Then the next step down here is going through and adding our Swagger definitions, which is our Open API, and then making sure that we serialize it correctly. All right, so now we're out to publishing. And so we can publish from Visual Studio to Azure all in one. So we don't have to leave Visual Studio at all. So the first step into this is creating and publishing to an app service. The second step here, and app service is just platform as a service, is just going to host our website. The second step
Right.
here is publishing to API management, and we'll talk a little bit more about what API management is later in this module. But here we go, publishing to it through the magic of the video. We're done, super quick. All right, so everything's out there, and here we go. So here's what Azure API management looks like. And this right here is super cool. I'm within Azure API Management, and I'm going to create a custom connector right from here. So here's my definition. I'm going to go down, export it, pick out Power Apps Custom Connector. Away I go, export it, exporting. Even better, I've exported it. I'm now within Power Apps Maker. And look here, I'm adding a data source. I'm picking the data source I just created. Going to put all these into a radio button list. And there they are. How cool is that? Now, it should be noted real quick. All we're doing is bringing in a list of cities. So we're pretending to get warehouse locations. And for our pro devs out here, check this out. This is just amazing. That right here, inventory management, get API warehouse locations. That means we're done. It has IntelliSense to it. It looks just like I said before, low code doesn't necessarily mean no code. We're using a class and a method, just like you'd be used to in C Sharp. Super cool.
Yeah, no, and two takeaways from this is the fact that one, you can deploy to Azure right from Visual Studio. So that's a really cool thing that has come up in recent times. And the other thing is that all of these steps that you've just went through now, it's making sure that you don't have to go, you don't have to have different tabs open, different apps open. You can use the tools that you're familiar with while working on the same app or working on the same Power App or working on the same API. It's a really great way to show that all the tools within the Microsoft Cloud work extremely well on their own, but they work much better when used together. So that is, I really like that aspect.
Yeah, it's so great that you can stay at home and be, like you said, be comfortable with the tools that you already know.
Yeah. Yeah, so judging from that video alone, I think we're in for a really great treat. Please also note that this is a live and interactive session, so please make sure that you are engaging with us in the chat. Don't be afraid to say hi and ask any questions. We have a bunch of experts on the line, ready and waiting to answer any questions you might have. So let's get right into it. As was mentioned before, this module that we're doing is part of a larger learning path which focuses on Fusion development. So Fusion Dev allows your business to build better apps faster by bringing together pro devs with citizen or low code devs. The fusion comes in because everyone on the team, no matter what skill level they have, all contributes within their comfort zones. So you'll be able to use the tool that you're comfortable with. If you're a pro dev, that can be VS Code or GitHub. And if you're a citizen dev, then the Power Platform would be something that you would use. So once a use case has been chosen, then the business owners or the citizen devs will go about and build that initial interface inside of Power Apps and the general flow of the app, while the pro devs go about and build complex APIs connecting to internal business data. And then we have to figure out how to get this connected to the citizen dev creating that Power App. So as we move on here, as citizen devs are building these Power Apps, you will have access to more than 600 connectors that connect to resources inside and outside of your business. If you just take a quick step to the previous slide, you'll know that there will be times where you might need a specific customized connector that connects to APIs that have been built within your business. This is called a custom connector, and it is what is used to fill that gap between a Power App and a web API. So it is a well-known issue that as much as great as all of these tools are, they might not fill every need you may have, especially if it's unique and localized to your business. So there is a way to combat that, to make sure that citizen devs have access to the data that they need to build the apps that they have to. So a major aspect of the Fusion Dev process is being able to create and use custom connectors, as I've said. So why don't we get a lowdown on what custom connectors are all about?
Sure. Custom connectors are super cool. So there are actually regular connectors, as we call them. So like they're first party connectors that like Microsoft creates, and then there's custom connectors that third parties create. Like so people that are watching this video would create custom connectors that connect their business to Power Apps. So let's talk a little bit about the first party connectors first. And so a connector extends the functionality of a Power App Canvas app a bit. So you can make a first party connector that would connect like to Azure SQL, for example, and bring back data from a table within there. Or it could send email out to via like Outlook. So you can send emails or read people's calendars or bring back your little photo from M365. First party connectors like that. You can have third party connectors like Gomolemo. Did you know that Dropbox like has a connector for Power Apps?
Yeah, that's a great point there, because we don't only have connectors to just Microsoft tools. There's a whole host of other third-party apps and services that we have connectors to.
Yep, and I'm waiting for Netflix to come up with a connector, because that way
That would be a very good one.
yes,
That'll take
exactly,
a
that
lot of my time.
exactly. Um, but so when we get beyond those, like, prepackaged third-party connectors, then we get into these custom connectors, and as this diagram shows, you have the Power Apps Canvas app, and then you have something that you created. When I say you, are the people viewing this, or you and I, Gomolemo, we sat down within like Visual Studio and we created an API. So like an inventory management API where we bring back how much stock we have in a certain warehouse, or even where the warehouse, which city it's located in. So we usually that's just consumed by like a web client or something and goes out and gets that information. But with a custom connector that can be brought back and used within Power Apps. So now we're expanding the usage of our inventory management API beyond like the web or beyond like a mobile app and bringing it in to Power Apps. We're really making Power Apps super powerful with these custom connectors. And so that's great. So Gomolemo, let's talk about one way that we can go about doing that. And the first would be API management.
Yeah, sure. So as mentioned in previous slides, you might be in a situation where your business has developed multiple APIs which serve various functions, and it would suit you best to have these managed in a central place. And this is what Azure API Management is. You can use Azure API Management to control and administer each of these APIs that you uniquely set whatever policies you want to. So you can set these policies to each API. You don't have to do it to the whole bunch, so that each API serves a specific purpose. So whether you want to add a bit of auth, or you want to add a rate limit, or you want to just add a bit of routing, API management, or Azure API management rather, can provide all of that and so much more. So the first part of this module will be focused on creating an API and then porting that into an Azure service, which we will then place into Azure API Management. So once you have your APIs up in Azure API Management, you are then able to create a custom connector by exporting it directly within the Azure portal. What's great about this specific method is that the Power Apps dev can then use this connector and essentially use the web API without even having to know about the details of how the web API even works. Once that connector is done exporting from Azure, then you will then be able to see this in your Power Apps connection page within Power App Studio. And then this is where the citizen dev can then directly pull the connector into a Canvas Power App. What's also great about this is that you can try all of this right after the session with the Power Apps Dev Plan, which gives you a free license to create these custom connectors and see if it is something worth using within your business. This Power Apps Dev Plan allows you free access to all these cool features in the development phase and practice phase, but as soon as you want to deploy them to a production, then that's when we're gonna be speaking about certain licensing, but that's a conversation for another day. So before we go ahead and create this, how about we tell them about the difference between what a connector is and what a connection is?
Yeah. So, unfortunately named, you have a connector, which Homelemo was just talking about, and which I was talking about before, and then a connection. So a connector really it's a wrapper around a web API, right? It's the thing that you consume in Power Apps that lets you invoke the invoke the web API. But you really can't do much with it without the connection. And so the connection itself is, think about it as the way to communicate with the connector. Essentially, it has the credentials in it. So it has the credentials and it also knows where that web API lives. So it's a way, it's as we have in this diagram here, it's the keys that unlocks the connector and what's all inside of that connector. So the connector is the thing that does, and the connection is how to get to that thing and how to access it. Connection is the keys, connector is the engine. That's how I like to think about that. So the names are very, very close and are easy to confuse. Connection, keys, connector, engine. How do I do, Home Alone? Does that make sense?
Right, that yeah, you've hit that one on the head. That makes complete sense, and I think for the purposes of this module and working with connectors in general, it's very crucial that you know the difference between the two.
Great.
How about we go ahead and actually show what this might look like? We will be going over a exercise to create a connector from Azure API Management.
Sounds great. So Home Alemo,
Right.
why don't you tell me what's all going to be involved here?
Yeah. So as was seen in the original video that we had earlier on, we'll be exporting a web API from API management to a custom connector, and then once that is inside of Azure, then we can create that connection to the connector that the citizen dev will then use within their Power App.
Great.
Awesome. So let's get that going. So this exercise can be found within the module itself. The first thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to be downloading the web API files from GitHub. We have those all packaged for you so you can access that. Let's download those files. Make sure you keep them in a place where you know where they are so that you can access them later. Uh, let's also go about and open that folder and extract the contents of that zipped file. Once we have that, we're going to be opening up the folder and then copying the directory. Let's open up a terminal in PowerShell and create and then cd into that. And then before we deploy to Azure, we obviously have to log in. So let's go about and do that. Once that is logged in, then we will need to run the PowerShell script that is within this folder. As soon as you start running that will then start to provision certain resources that you will need to complete this exercise. So you have the API up in Azure as well as the Azure API Management service. So once that is done, we will then be able to go into our Azure portal where we should be able to see our resources. Let's check that in. Let's choose the API management service there. But now we need to get our subscription key because we need a way to authenticate these APIs for various security reasons. Then we'll be looking for the API within the API pane. That's the API that we have there, inventory management. And directly within the portal, we can go ahead and export that. And we'll obviously be exporting that to Power Apps, where we choose the environment we want to export that to, as well as choosing a relevant API display name. This is very crucial so that the citizen dev knows the purpose of these APIs. So once those are exported, the citizen dev or you as a pro dev should be able to see that within the Power App Studio. So under data, custom connections, that's where we were able to find our connector. If we have a bunch of connectors, we can just quickly solve that with a bit of a search. And then once we find our connector there, let's create a connection. So let's hit that plus sign there. And then we're going to be copying the subscription key pasting the key that we copied earlier to make sure that is authorized there. And then once that connection is done, it will be inside of your connections tab inside of Power App Studio. And you can go ahead and use that whatever way you want or see fit. So just a few easy steps. We went from Web API to Azure API Management to a connector that the citizen dev can now use.
Great. And one thing I wanted to point out real quick, Gomolemo, was when you're running the setup that PowerShell script, that actually did go through and provisioned everything, and it had the all the source code for the web API in there. So you didn't have to actually build it at all. We have it pre-built. It zip deploys and it creates everything for you. So super easy when you're going through the Learn module that you don't have to take care of all the plumbing. It gets you right into doing the fun stuff, creating that custom connector. So I just want to point that
Very
out.
true.
Yep. So cool.
Yeah, okay. I think it's time for a bit of a knowledge check. Let's see what we've learned thus far. Um, and let's go ahead with those questions that we have here. The first questions, we'll pull that up now, which again, you can find these in the learning module as well. So Matt, I'm going to pose this question to you. What is the least relevant while creating a custom connector from Azure API Management? Right. So the keyword here is least relevant, and of course the audience can take part in this as well. So option A: each API in Azure API Management has the export menu to create a custom connector.
All
What do
right.
you think, Matt?
That seems pretty important, right? I mean,
Right.
if it's the
Yeah.
least relevant, that seems pretty important. And we want to be able to export it. So I'm going
Yeah.
to say it's not A.
Right, right. I think that's a good choice. That's a good choice. The next one here, B, is Azure API Management offers the feature for the direct creation of a custom connector for Power Apps. Right. That was a pretty action-packed demo we just went through there. So we might have missed it, we might haven't. So let's see. Let's. What do you think about this one?
Again, I think the direct creation of a custom connector for Power Apps integrated right into API management does seem pretty important, pretty useful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that is not the least relevant. I'm going to
Yeah.
say that's pretty relevant.
Yeah, and that's like the core of what Fusion Dev is, right? To be able to do all of this in one place. So seems quite crucial, that one. I won't lie.
Yep.
And C, our final answer here is to use the custom connector within Power Apps, you don't need to create a connection for it.
Aha.
That's
Now, yep. So I did that slide where we were talking about the keys and the engine. And to use a custom connector, you do need a connection. You do need to be able to
right.
like you when you were doing Gomolemo, the when you copy the API subscription key, that is
Yes.
the authentication. So C. My answer is going to be
Very true.
C.
Very true. Yeah, it's for sure C, and I hope everyone in the audience chose that as well. It is quite crucial to remember that a connector only defines the API contracts. To use the connector, you should create a connection that includes authentication details like the subscription key that we copied from Azure. As you've said, that is actually quite spot on. So I hope that was clear to the audience as well. Awesome. Right. So moving
Excellent.
right along, let's talk about what is an open API and why you should use this as another option for creating a custom connector. So Open API defines a standard for describing web APIs in a manner that allows both humans and computers to discover and understand the capabilities of a service without having access to the source code. That's quite a mouthful there, so I'll try and explain that further. So as a human, if we were to have this open API document in front of us, we should be able to understand exactly what the API is meant to do. But you understand exactly how to communicate it and all of this with minimal effort. And on the flip side, that open API document is probably described, then a custom connector should be created from it. So if that is a well written or well sourced out open API document, as a human, we should be able to decipher exactly what it should do. And um, the and you should be able to import it into the Power App Studio, and it should be able to read that and create a custom connector from it as well.
And
Do you have any thoughts about this, Matt?
I do. And that's a very good point. In that if you're a person, which we all are people, you could just take this open API document and
Yeah.
look at it and know exactly what it does.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Homo,
Very true.
you touched on this before our last demo,
Yeah.
and you said that a creator, a Power Apps maker, does not need to care about how the the web API is implemented. They just need to
Very true.
care
Very true.
essentially how it's called, what the methods are and what it's going to return. Well, this open API document, as you're about to get into, I'm sorry, I'm stealing it, does the same thing. So why don't you tell us? Why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So again, in simple terms, you can quickly build your apps just by knowing what methods to call and what they will return without having to worry about how these methods are invoked or called. So what this means is that the web API can be created from the OpenAPI documents, and you don't have to create a dependency on Azure API Management. So in that case, if any change is made on the API in Azure API Management, you have to make sure that the connector is updated to reflect those changes. With the Open API documents, you don't have to know where that API is hosted because the documents all contain all the information that you need. So from this, why don't we try and find out why we would use an Open API document?
Sure. So there are a ton of different advantages for using it, and you hit on some of those before, Gomolemo, like saying that it has all the information in it that you need, and you don't have to go through Azure API management. But another cool thing is that it is decoupled from your web API itself. So it
Right.
describes it, but it's not reliant upon it. It's not reliant upon using. Well, it's reliant upon it is that it does need information, but it's not reliant upon API management at all. So the custom connector itself gets you. You just import the OpenAPI.json document, and it is .json into Power Apps, and then away you go. And so what's neat about that is your maker can
Mhm.
just do it on a fly, because a lot of the times the um like you have Swagger generation, and you can download it. You can download the OpenAPI document right from this website, a Swagger website it's called. You can download it from there, that the web API creates for you, and then away you go. So the makers, they just need to be able to find this website and download that open API document. They're not reliant upon any pro devs or anybody else to update everything for them. So they're decoupled from that, and so it helps with the prototyping. They can fastly prototype their Power Apps, in that way. So there are other other features between the two. So Humalemo, what are they? Let's give us a rundown of this.
Sure. Yeah, let's briefly compare the two options. The two options being an Open API document or Azure API Management. So when it comes down to it, an Open API document is an easy way for folks to get started creating a custom connector, as the barrier to entry is much lower because you're less involved. But as you advanced beyond that, with more complex systems and more APIs to manage, then Azure API Management is the way to go because it offers more benefits and it is much more flexible. With Azure API Management, it is a more centralized API control because the data is gathered in a central place. So the API requests are fired directly against the central data store. While with an open API document, it is more decentralized approach where the API requests are fired directly to the API endpoints, which actually gives away to our next point that the API structure layer is a much more complex uh, layer in Azure API management because you have all of these APIs managed in one central place. It is also good to note that in terms of adding an extra security layer, it is very much possible to add over and above what the Open API documents may need. We also have a much more flexible usage control with Azure API management than with an Open API document. And to add any extra functions with API management, this would come at a bit of an extra cost. With the nature of how API management works, the architecture is much more complex than that of an open API document. So there's a lot to take in here.
Yep, exactly. And so you could think of Azure API management as like the enterprise grade for managing a ton of different APIs that your company may have. And you mentioned the usage control. So what you can do there is that you could like rate limit how many requests a certain API can get within an hour. So
Right.
you can lock that thing down and say I only want this to get served 10 requests in an hour. Or you can put different subscription keys like for different people. So like we can actually essentially start charging. Like so Gomolemo, I'm going to make you pay to get to my API. So think about the different subscription services out there. Like we said, Netflix before. So we could put that behind Azure API management and make sure we can start making money off of our custom connectors, for example. And we can do
Right.
routing to make sure the request goes in through
Mhm.
Azure API management and follows through to the correct app service that's sitting behind it or a specific version. So it's really this enterprise grade service. It's big. It's awesome. Um, but it's a lot. I mean, it's complex as we talk about in that bottom point, and it is does cost something. Whereas an open API document, you just get that from a regular web service, and away you go. You're pointing directly at that web service. So you have to pick which one's better for your situation. There's not a right or a wrong answer, but
Yeah.
sometimes depending on your needs, there might be. So
Yeah, and I guess this all just depends on the size of your business or the size of the solution that you need to build. Of course, this is up to you to figure out where you want to be, what you want to use. So yeah, that is totally open to what you prioritize best.
exactly.
So with all this information overload, I think it's best for us to get into another exercise.
Yeah, I agree. And so we are going to talk about the Open API document itself and creating the custom connector for it. So we're going to move API management out of the equation for now and go the lean route and just talk about creating a custom connector from that API document. All right. So what we have here is the a Swagger definition, a Swagger defined API management or a Swagger defined Open API document. And here we go. And so the first thing I want to show is how human readable this is. All right. So let's take a look at this. So the name of it, okay, one thing. I do want to stop and say one thing. The definition, the Open API definition must be 2.0. There's 3.0 out there right now, and we need to use 2.0 though for this. Just FYI. Um, yeah. All right. So here we go. And so we could tell that like the name of this, the title is inventory management, and we can see that the host that we're running on here is going to be Learn Live api.azureapi.net. So that's where everything is. And our base path for this is going to be inventory. So that's where the API lives behind. All right. So we'll keep on running here and we're going to see another thing. So I'm just looking at this and kind of picking up where everything lives. And I can see for our security definitions that I'm going to require a subscription key itself. And it's going to go into the query string and it's going to be an API type key. And cool. So I could start figuring out what it's going to look like. Again, though, I just need to know what it looks like. I don't care really how things are implemented. All right, now we get to the fun stuff. What the request is going to look like. It's going to look behind API/warehouse locations. It's going to be a get HTTP verb. And I have a summary here that's going to help me if I was just kind of, I could change this up and say, I'm going to get all the warehouse locations in the world. Has a tag. And look at this. It tells me what it's producing. Plain text, JSON, great. And then moving on, I also have down here, once we move down a little bit, what the response is going to be. It's going to respond when on a success. It's going to respond with this reference to definitions warehouse city array. All right. Where is that? Let's scroll down just a tad here. All right, we see down here, warehouse city array. It tells me it's a type of an array of warehouse cities. And this is what warehouse city is. It's going to have a city name property and it's going to be a string. So this tells me everything I need to know about this API. I could put it all together. Super cool. And even better, a machine, when it reads it, it can put it all together too.
Right.
All right. So as we move on here in just a second, here we are now in Power Apps. So you notice I skipped over the API management. We don't have to worry about that. Went right to the Power Apps maker, and I'm going to go ahead and import it. I'm going over to the data side over here, and then I'm going to go down and I'm going to pick connections or custom connectors. My bad, not connections. See, I got it screwed up, Obo. I said connections, custom connectors. All right. So I pick custom connectors, and then I'm going to go over and hit a new one. And I'm going to say import an OpenAPI file. I could grab it from a URL, but I'm just, because I have it downloaded, I'm going to do it from a file. And then I'm going to give it a name. And then I will go and pick the file that I have on my hard drive. All right, here I go. Hit continue. And then Power Apps figures everything out for me and just go ahead and create the connector. Great. It has everything in there, and I can go ahead then and click close. All right, so here we are with just a ton of other connectors in there. So I'm going to go ahead and search for it, and here it is. And so here this next part is creating the connection or getting the keys so we can call it. Click on that, and I have to enter my API key again. Great, put that in there, hit create, adding it. Awesome. And so I'm going to scroll down, all the way down, looking for my connection.
Lots of work being done here.
There's a lot. This is the our Microsoft tenant, so we get to play with everybody. All right, so there it is. Cool. Click on it, and here's what's cool. As you can see the connector name. So I'm looking in the connection, so I can see what the connection is connected to. And I also could see if there's any apps using it. Not yet. Or any flows using it. All right. We're on our way.
Awesome. So just as a quick one, as we move on here, you have showed exactly what we've been talking about with the Open API documents. You were able to open it up before all of this and
Mm.
read how everything worked, where the data was coming from, how it was called. You were able to understand that. And once you imported that into the Power App Studio, it just read that document and you didn't have to intervene at all, and it
Correct.
knew what to create, where to point to. So that is the beauty of having a open API document, especially one which is well written, that
Yep.
both you and I and Power App Studio can read that and know exactly what it needs to do.
Exactly.
Right. Let's do another question here. That let's go. So we've just seen how these open API documents work. So the question here is, there are several ways to create a custom connector for Power Apps. What is not the way to create the custom connector? Right. So first one being, you can export from Azure API Management. That sounds
Well,
quite familiar.
we watched it.
Yep,
We know it.
very true. Very true. You can either import from an open API file. I do know you can import from something. Is that something an open API file? We'll
It
find out
is.
in a bit.
Oh, yep. It is.
And then C, import a WSDL file. To be
Yes.
honest, I have
That
never heard of this.
that's a hat tip to our to the all the old people that are my age. A WSDL file, web service definition language. It yeah, very old. Can't do it. The answer is C.
Right.
So
So, of course, if we've done our jobs right, then you'd all know that Power Apps can import APIs from an open API documents and from Azure. And with Azure API Management, we can directly export a custom connector. So there we go. So moving on here, we're just going to be speaking very briefly about testing, right? So as with everything in the world of building apps, once we have created something, we need to check whether it works as we expected. So luckily for us, citizen devs can test their connectors right from within the Power App Studio. Again, this plays into the notion that um, we do not need to leave the environments that we are familiar with to use the tools that we need to. So once that testing phase is done, once we have tested our connector, then we are more than ready to use that custom connector inside of your Power App. I think let's just go ahead and see how that testing looks like here in our exercise. So we're going to be testing the connector right inside of Power App Studio. So as we're in the connectors page here, we're going to look for our connector, and then we're going to edit. Just click on that pencil icon to edit and see what are the options that we have in relevance to the connector that we have here. So once we click on that edit button there will be four main options. One of those options is test. So we can go directly to test and see how that would look like. Just go here real quickly. Just click on edit. You see, so we have four options. Let's just move right on to the test tab. We don't need to focus about anything else. And then make sure that the connection is the correct one. So that will take a bit of time to load up. And then we'll notice that we only have one operation, the one which we defined in either the Open API documents or inside a web API inside of VS Code. So once we test that, that should give us a success code. If it works well, it'll give us the names of those cities where those warehouses are located. And in some instances, if that connection fails, we will be able to see that, and this is what that response would look like inside of the Power Apps Studio. You can then pass this over to whoever created that API, and they should be able to get that fix ASAP. So it's as simple as that. As a citizen dev, we can test these connectors right from inside the Power App Studio.
Great. And so we have another knowledge check, but Gomolemo, I know we're running a little bit short on time here. So
Yeah,
I know we have one more demo to go. So when we're discussing the differences between a connector and a connection, what is not correct? It's going to be
right.
C.
Yeah, it's got to be C because it's a connector knows the connection details to the APIs like the auth, and this is not true. This is the connection. The connection should know what the details are, as the connector is just that wrapper, pretty
Right.
much.
So let's talk about actually using the custom connector within a Power App. And so it's really, once you have it, you just bring it in and then boom, you can start popping it in everywhere. So actually, the best way to show that then is going to be in a demo. So we have everything created just like Gomolemo and I showed us. So it's time to create a new app. So open up, create a new app, give it a name. Doesn't matter what we name it. And then once we get in there, give it a form factor. And then here we go. Power Apps is getting everything ready for us, spinning it up. And then I'm going to go over, once we get that ready, I'm going to go over to the little database icon. I see I have no data, but I'm going to hit the add data and then go to connectors. And of course, I'm going to have to search for it because there's so many of it, but I see my inventory management one. I bring it in. It's going to load it up. I see it there. Add it. And then I put a button in here so I can call it. And then on the button on select, I'm going to just say clear the collection. So it says get rid of any items that were in this collection. And I'm going to say what the collection variable is. And I'm going to say right here, inventory management dot get API warehouse locations. And for all my professional developer friends, you have to love the IntelliSense popping up here. So cool. All right, here we go. It's all there. So now what I'm going to do is just put a vertical gallery in here and click, make it a little bit bigger, and then click the button to get it all out. And then we'll skip ahead. Double click it. Come on, here we go. And everything's in there. Amazing. It all worked. How cool is that?
Right. Really, really cool way for you to bring that data right into Power Apps from your pro dev as a citizen dev. So yeah, as promised, we have created our connectors both from an Azure API Management web API as well as an OpenAPI document, and we've showed you how to test that and use that within a Power Apps Canvas app. For a more detailed summary, please go to the link which is presently on our screen. And of course, we invite you to go and look at this module on Microsoft Learn right after the session or after build, so that you can do all of these exercises on your own.
Great. Thanks, Gomolemo. I know we rushed it at the end, but seriously, so cool. Once you get the connector created, hit that little database button, bring it into your Power App, all the IntelliSense lights up, and there you have it. All the data that your OpenAPI document said will be there, it's there. Super easy. Gomolemo, thank you very much. This was a great session. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. I had an amazing time. Thanks, everyone.